Hello and welcome to episode 43 of our Conversation to Connect. Let's Get Real Talk, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm CyndiONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. At Exceptional Connections, we offer intentional and innovative solutions to boost your business. Each month, we nominate different members of our Exceptional Connections community to have meaningful conversations with, as well as highlight our monthly spotlight speakers. So make sure to make yourself comfortable with a cup of tea or a beverage of your choice, and take notes. Be sure to add comments or water with lemon, right? And add questions, comments to the chat box to engage us during this conversation. Elise is very interactive, and I know she's going to want that kind of input. And then around the 45-minute mark, I'll unmute the lines and we'll invite our listeners to questions, share their ahas, their epiphanies, and of course, have you enter into our thought-provoking conversation. So the inspiration of our bi-weekly Conversation to Connect, Let's Get Real Talks, is to create powerful conversations. We really desire to be relevant during these challenging and uncertain times. And of course, to support our community, to make an impact in the world and stay connected. So as we get started, I invite you to set aside distractions and invest your attention in the conversation that's about to unfold. So look for just one idea that you can take away and put into action so you don't cheat yourself out of the time that you've invested here. Our Conversation to Connect this week is with Elise Enriquez from Lake Forest Park, Washington. Welcome, Elise.
Hello, hi. I love that you let everybody know where everybody's from. That's just really fun for me.
It is. It's fun. We've got people from Richmond, Virginia. We've got Canada. We've got Poulsbo and Squim and all over the place. So it's really fun. The beauty of Zoom, right?
Yep.
And so the topic that we're going to discuss today, it's time for a shift, moving productivity beyond the to-do list. So before we dive into this intriguing conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce Elise to our listeners. And if you could please mute yourself. Hello, Karen. Thanks for joining us. If you guys can mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. And we'll open the call up later in the session here. So I want to take just a moment to introduce Elise. So Elise Enriquez is a productivity coach who guides people to breakthroughs in life and business by illuminating what's next. I love that word illuminating because it really is shining the light, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And capturing people's brilliance. Breakthroughs are what leads to success in business and life. Elise is your guide to discovering and doing what matters, so you and your team can take steps to leap forward to your next achievement. She takes her experience in the operational world of corporate America, the entrepreneurial world of real estate, and the transformational world of coaching to help you move forward with what matters most. So Elise, share with our listeners a bit about your journey so we can get to know you before we jump into this amazing topic that is so timely right now.
Sure. Well, let's start at the very beginning. Just very briefly, the very beginning. I'm a Washingtonian, so I'm somebody who's been, I'm a lifelong Washingtonian. I grew up in Central Washington and Selah. Everybody always says Eastern Washington, right? But that's because it's east of the mountains, but it's technically Central Washington, as our fair name is called, the Central Washington State Fair. So Selah's right by Yakima. I grew up on a berry farm, and then hightailed it to the big city for college. So I went to UW and did what every student does who doesn't know what they want to do. I got a communications degree and went into the world of advertising, actually. And so my corporate experience was at Microsoft in the online advertising division. Before that, I was at a small media placement firm, but the majority of my corporate experience was at a big corporation at Microsoft. And it was fun because it was the Wild West then. It was very entrepreneurial space because it was online advertising. So it was a whole new space to be in. And I didn't realize that I was in this kind of entrepreneurial space within a larger company. And then after a while, we got big enough to where it's like, oh, this isn't fun anymore to be in this bigger company, and transitioned into real estate. and really got my kind of entrepreneurial, feet wet there in that water, and got exposed to coaching through real estate. So real estate lending, those are big industries where there's a lot of coaching in those industries. And a lot of times it's really all about just do what I did and you'll make millions of dollars kind of things. And it's a bunch of typically older white guys on a stage telling you what to do. Just do what I did. Just do what I did without a thought for what's your style? What's your approach? What do you really need? What do you really want? And that maybe millions of dollars doesn't need to be the end goal. And so, because of that, I got exposed to other, worlds of coaching, and realized that that's something that I could do with people in a lot of different ways. And so 13 years ago, I became a coach. I got certified as a life coach initially, then a Myers-Briggs facilitator, and all these kinds of other things followed. And more recently, in the past 6 years, really focused more on productivity. And that's what we're going to talk about today is my take on productivity, and hoping to make a shift in the world with that.
Beautiful. Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off.
No, that's okay.
Well, let's just jump right in because you have so much to share, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation so we can kind of really dig into the things that you've put a lot of thought into over the years. So I want to just start off with, how do you distinguish, let's see here. Let me make sure I'm in the right place. I don't think I'm in the right place. Okay. Yes. How do you distinguish the traditional definition of productivity, that we've heard over the years, and the new definition of productivity that you brought to us at our last week during our networking event?
Yeah, I would love to hear for the folks who are here live, what's your take on productivity? Put that in the chat just to kind of get to establish that level of where everybody's at right now. And I think a lot of times when we think about productivity, there's productivity coaching in the sales world that's all about production, like sales production. How many deals did you close? How much money did you make? It's all about kind of like accomplishment, how much is getting done, that kind of thing. And even outside of that, I think when people think of productivity, they think of, day planners, they think of apps, they think of all these different things. And it's not, doesn't have to be about what is getting done. Let's see, Nicole. See, I was hoping, Nicole, I was hoping you'd say something. I was like, hopefully Nicole's gonna say something. Thinking about it as people doing things in space and time. I love it. I love it. Yeah, right? Because that's what it is. I just think of it so much as time is a resource. How are we going to manage that? And so for me, it became this idea that yes, tools and apps and schedules and checklists and calendars and all of those things are very helpful and very important, but do they hold what actually matters most? Are they helping you move forward at what actually matters most to you? Because we can get really caught up and even overwhelmed by the day-to-day, little things, and not really move forward what matters most. So to me, what productivity is about is moving forward what matters most while still remaining present to the people, experiences, and opportunities all around you, right? So it's having those systems in place that can hold things, right? That can hold the stuff that you want it to hold, that you like when something occurs to you, you can put it there and trust it so that you can come back and I can be here with you all, right? I can come back and really be present at dinner with my family. I can come back and be really present with my client so that so that where I'm at, I'm actually fully present. And so to me, that's what it's all about, is being clear about what matters most and figuring out how to move that forward. And of course, there's going to be systems involved. There will be to-do lists involved, but having those support you in moving forward what matters most.
So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat box because I think that's really brilliant and it bears repeating. So Elise her company is GYST. So get your stuff together is one way to say it, right? And
that's our daytime version of
exactly
daytime on a meeting version of it. Yeah,
the PG version.
Yeah,
and
PG.
So making progress on what's most important to you, to us, right? And at the same time remaining present to the people, experiences, and opportunities that matter most. As a mom that's raised her children now, I would have loved to have really kind of simmered on that one. right? Because there's so
Yeah.
much that calls out to us. And the being present part is not always easy, especially as a
Mhm.
mom. And we want to do that with our clients as well, of course. But
Yeah.
there's a lot running in our head. So if any of that is something that you've been challenged with before, you're in the right place, because we're going to talk about, kind of dig in here.
Well,
So
and I just want to note something real quick, Cyndi. You're talking about being a mom. We're all, whether we're employees or the business owners here, like we're all entrepreneurial in nature to be, joining together in this group. And so I think it's especially important for those entrepreneurial minded people who are always thinking, who are always having the ideas, or who are trying to keep a business going and moving it forward. It can be harder to turn that off than maybe it is if you're somebody who does shift work, right? Like I remember being
true.
at Microsoft, and I just had that entrepreneurial mind of always wanting to make things better, always wanting to improve things. And so it was hard for me to turn it off sometimes. And I remember telling my boss one time, like, I just want to work at a place like a grocery store where I can go in for a shift, scan
Right.
the items, give people the correct change, which would be hard for me because I'm really bad at that, and move on, and and just wrap up my day, right? He said, Elise, you'd be managing the store by the end of the month, right? If you went and worked at a grocery store, you'd be like managing the store by the end of the month. He's like, you can't. And so it's like, it's understanding that we have these brains that are solving problems. We're coming up with ideas, and it's having the stuff to support you, and getting to have all that and be present, right, with your people, and be present with yourself, and have some time to just breathe and sleep well and enjoy a meal, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I just
Yes.
want to call that part out.
No, you made a really good point there, because it's twofold. One, we're entrepreneurs. That's who we are. That's our DNA. We are outside the box thinking people for the most part. And it's also because we've chosen that, we don't have a 9 to 5 job.
Hmm.
So we're always on. And so we have to learn how to manage that so that we can give the people in our life the attention they deserve and give ourselves that downtime as well. We just really recently went on a little vacation to Cannon Beach. And I was purposeful about, we took pictures, we took videos, but I did not post anything. And I tried to stay off my, text, email, all that. And so I came back feeling like really unplugged. And it was only a couple
Hmm.
days, but
It's
we need
different
that.
now. It's
We
different
need
now.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important. So, okay. So with that working definition that you've crafted that's
And
so
Cyndi,
beautifully.
Nicole has her hand up, so I don't know
Oh,
if you were wanting to call on people now
oh,
or later.
well, sure.
We can, are we
If you
doing
want,
that? We don't have
we
to
were
do
going
that
to
now.
open up at the end, but if you have
Okay.
something to ask, go ahead. Go ahead and ask
No,
it.
no, 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 no. I'm engaging in the conversation.
Yes.
So I will do that after.
Feel
I'll make
free
a
to put it
note.
in the chat box, because we
Yeah.
want to be able to make sure we're timely when you have your thoughts. We want to make sure we just get through all the material. That's the reason for kind of holding off a little
Got
bit,
it.
but
Got it.
please do put it in the chat box. So what is the key ingredient that you see
Ooh,
for this
yeah.
new kind of productivity?
Yes, yes. Well, this is where I would love to be able to share a visual because I like doing that. So hold on, let me go ahead and
Please
get
do.
get this into presentation mode for you guys.
So
Um,
while you're doing that,
yeah.
so Nicole, who I just adore Nicole, because she is a deep thinker. And I really like engaging with people who like think outside the box. So she's saying, I'm always wanting to change things and what will make things better, right? Always improving things. So I love that.
All righty, let me go ahead and share.
And Mary likes the idea of being fully present, which is
Yes.
really important because people
And
feel
we're
that,
given
right?
every opportunity not to right now these days, right? Like we're giving so many
Yes.
ways to not be that right now in
Yes.
this world. We have so much coming at us all the time that it's impossible to really pay attention to it all, right? So it's kind of one of those when everything is important, nothing's important, right? And so that's kind of what we're about. That's what I want to touch on right now is that ingredient that's important. And where this came from for me was again this entrepreneurial perspective of, man, when you're growing a business, you want to be responsive, right? You want to be as responsive as possible. You want to just make sure you're getting back to these people right away and you're saying yes to everything and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes that turns into reactivity. It all of a sudden is just knee jerk. Every text that comes through, we're just on it right away. Every email that comes through, we're on it right away. And suddenly we've lost that responsiveness and it's turned into reactivity. And so this is where I love this quote from Viktor Frankl, where it's between the stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. And our response lies our growth and our freedom. It is taking that pause and saying, what do I want? Is this in alignment with where I want to go, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't respond to a text when it comes in, because sometimes that is the most important thing you could be doing at that moment. But more often than not, it isn't, right? So more often than not, reading every email as it comes in and responding to it as quickly as possible is probably getting in the way of something else. And so for me, what it's all about when it comes to productivity is intention. And my formula for intention is clarity, communication, and consistency. Getting clear about what matters most, communicating that to who matters most, whoever, and that depends on what the clarity is about, right? If the clarity is about a shift in your business, the communication might be to the stakeholders in that business, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your accountant, whether it's your attorney, your marketing person, whatever, whoever that might be. And even if you wear all those hats, it's communicating to yourself in all of those ways to like, here's all the ways that this affects what we're doing here, right? And then setting up systems of consistency to support you in making progress, right? And taking either consistent action, if that's the case, or making consistent progress. And so to me, intention is the key to all of it, to make sure that you're saying, here's where I want to go. I'm letting everybody in on that who needs to be let in. And then I'm saying, okay, this is the experience I'm trying to create for myself and for others. What systems do I need to put in place to support that? Simple systems, simple systems always.
Right. And Nicole is saying she loves that you can decide not to and choose the where and the when.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's, I mean, choice is so important. We're learning that nowadays. We're being reminded
yes.
of that.
Yes,
Right. So yes, it's really critical for that. So I love that. Are you going to share your quote? Because I think it really brings it all, the achieving your vision.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And I was realizing, yeah, the next slide might be helpful too. So in what this looks like is being able, the clarity, communication, consistency kind of in a different format is like, I want this, right? And you're like realizing this is what I want, and then telling somebody I want this, and then saying, okay, here's what I need to do. I'll do this, right? And here's what that looks like, and here's what's going to be in place to support me. So
yes.
this was
so can we go back to that for a second? Because I think this is really important. And this is where my light bulb went on. And, aptly you have a light bulb there. So I want this, you're thinking this yourself. Like this is what we need to first internalize for ourselves. And then we need to communicate it, right? Yep. So the clarity, thinking it, be able to verbalize it, communicate it to somebody else. There's power in that. And then the action, just to go do it.
Yeah. So what am I going to do? How am I going to move this forward?
This is brilliant. I hope people can, I don't know if anybody else has this epiphany right now, like I do. When I heard it the first time, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then as I was preparing for our talk and just kind of formulating questions, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing because it's so simple, yet it's so profound.
Well, in this part, I want this discussion, it took a while for me to realize that was part of a formula, right? Like this formula has been developed over years of coaching, right? Where I'm just like, oh, like this is the thing I keep doing with people, right? Clarity, communication, consistency. But the communication part wasn't always there. And I realized, oh, I'm constantly helping people have conversations. Like almost every coaching session is like, okay, well, they're like, oh, they come up with something they need to talk about, and we're realizing they need to have a conversation with somebody, and we hash out what that conversation might look like, right? And because it's hard to do sometimes on your own, right? And so I was realizing this communication component with your team of people, whoever that is, on whatever topic or what area of your life and business that is important, because we're not in this alone, you guys, right? We've got people out there ready to support us. We're not alone. Let's engage our people and let them know where it is we're trying to go so they can help us.
So this is what we do, but to be able to know what we do, I think is really empowering,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In any systems, because I'm a system and structure girl. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way my brain thinks. And I think
Yep.
everybody else thinks that way. And when they don't, I'm like,
You're like, what?
why not?
Why?
Huh? Doesn't make sense. So, we're all different. We all have different gifts, different strengths. But anyway, I think this is just really, really brilliant.
I like what you said, Nicole. When my boundaries are fuzzy or I don't talk about them, right? I get fuzzy and my people get fuzzy and annoyed. So it's so true. So I'm a Enneagram type 9. I'm an ENFJ. I'm a go with the flow, don't rock the boat girl, right? And so which means I can not articulate boundaries for so long that when I finally articulate them, it is way stronger than it needs to be, right? So it's like, so that's where it's like,
Yeah.
as soon as you get that clarity, find a way to have just initial versions of that conversation.
Yes.
Things don't have to be fully baked, right? Just let people into like what you're thinking about, what you're considering. And it's going to vary for different personality types, introversion versus extroversion, all that kind of stuff. But just be brave enough to find the people that want what's best for you and want to support you, and start to let them in on the clarity that you're uncovering.
Yes. And part of the clarity is knowing who you are. So you just shared that with the Myers-Briggs, you're the ENFJ. So I used to be an ENFJ, and then the last 5 years I tested INFJ, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. I switched consistently when I took the test. And for me, I realized it's because I'm more comfortable in my own skin right now. So I can be an introvert.
Yes.
And I determined that the reason I'm an introvert versus an extrovert, although a lot of people would say, no, you're not, Cyndi, you're an extrovert. Well, the distinction for me, and I don't want to go on a huge rabbit trail here, but we're talking about knowing yourself, right?
Yep. It's important.
Is that where you get filled up.
Yes.
Like I need to come home to regroup, to fill up my cup before I go out. Whereas a true extrovert, they get filled up being around people.
Yep. Engaging
with others.
Karen's like,
Yeah. So
it's an important distinction, because people, my wife's an introvert. People would fully expect her to prefer extroversion. Like, she is so, I take her with me to anything and she could talk to anybody. She's just this little butterfly going around the room. That is not her preference. She's just good at it. Like so for introversion, when you have a role you're supposed to play, you can play it really well, and you can show up that way, and people think like, oh, look at that person. They're not shy, right? So they can't be an introvert, and introversion isn't about shy or not. I'm a very shy, socially anxious extrovert. Like,
yes.
I am like, oh, put me in a new space with a bunch of new people, and I'm like, no, and I can do it, right? And then I have fun, and then I'm energized. But going into it, there's a lot of anxiety and shyness that's happening there, but I get filled up, right? That's the extroversion part.
Yes. And understanding ourselves is so important. And that's part of this whole process of clarity, communication, consistency. Absolutely. Is knowing who we are.
Yep. Absolutely. So the quote that you were asking about was just saying, achieving your vision takes clarity, communication, consistency, and learning, repeated as you attain each goal, right? So this is not a one and done check off, check things off and then you're done with this, with being intentional. Intentional is a constant practice, right? And so it's being able to make sure you're working yourself through that cycle just over and over again, wherever it is that you're wanting to move something forward.
Yes. And the consistency part is important because we need to keep doing it.
Yes.
It's not something like you said, it's one and done. It's just, wash, rinse, repeat. Let's go. Let's keep doing this because it works. It's important.
Well, And how many times have you all, like, has this happened to you when you're just like, oh, I was doing so well at this thing and I was really making progress and I don't know why I just kind of stopped. And it's like, why do we stop? Why did you
Right.
stop? And that's worth digging into to maybe get going again, right? Because that thing worked.
Yes.
How can we repeat those successes instead?
Well, that's what I've found is for me, that has been the number. I'd love to hear from others in the chat box, and we can open it up in a little bit here. Is, when you stop, when you pause, when there's a loss of momentum, then we have to start over again. And it takes so much more energy, I found. And
Yes.
so to just keep things moving, even if you have to slow them down, is really important.
Yeah, even if you have to scale back. I think it was Brian Buffini is a real estate coach, one of the rich white guys on stage, who I love actually. He was like kind of my earliest influence when it came to coaching, and he would say just keep one oar in the water, right? Like just keep, like, do the minimum if that's what it takes, but don't stop. Just don't
Right.
stop. And
Right.
sometimes there are the days, there are the seasons, there are the times where the minimum is going to be enough, where it needs to be enough because there's other things that might be more important at that time.
Okay. That's great. That's a great reminder. So share with us, Elise, your magic
Yes.
formula to boost productivity.
Well, we just did. We talked about intention. So the clarity, communication, consistency. But what we didn't talk about is like where that actually gets applied, right? So the more of the detail around that. So let
Yes.
me go ahead. Well, I'm going back to
Deeper
slides
dive.
in. Yeah, we're gonna do the deeper dive. So I'm like, let's use visuals. So we got them. Let's use them. Why not? Um, so it's taking the model and applying it at these different levels, elevations, whatever you want to say, of your life, right? So there's purpose and values, visions and goals, projects and actions. So what I have found is, well, actually we'll get to that part in a second. So if we drill down into this, it's just a few simple but not necessarily easy to answer, questions. When it comes to purpose, it's kind of, what kind of impact do you want to have in the world? Why are you here? Simon Sinek, the way he phrases it is, what gets you out of bed every morning and why should the rest of the world care that you did? And so that means that your purpose is not your kids. Like, your purpose is not necessarily putting food on the table. That's motivation, right? That's a motivator. That might get you out of bed, but what keeps you getting out of bed every single day? Motivation, I find, is those kinds of motivations is a fuel that burns like hot and fast, right? But purpose is a sustainable fuel. Purpose is something that can just keep you going. And when you can tap into purpose, it's really powerful. And it's also a good filter, right? It's also a good filter to be able to say, does this matter most? Is it in alignment with my purpose, right? So it's an important aspect of productivity, is knowing, why am I here? What am I trying to do? And values, I love, is kind of through that lens of, who do I want to be regardless? I
What do
think I
you mean by
mentioned,
that?
well, yeah, I mean a couple of things. So I used to mean there's how I learned it, and then what it's evolved to. So I learned it as like, who do you want to be regardless of how everybody else is acting, right? So
Yes.
say I had a scenario for a client went through, where somebody did a direct post onto her news feed, onto her feed on Facebook, saying something that was kind of private, right? And not necessary to do as a post. It would normally have been a phone call, a text, a private message, like. And so my friend could have gone, or my client could have gone back and said, hey, what the heck, and like commented there. But she just did a very neutral comment and then let it sit for the night and just left it. And then went the next day and called that person and said, hey, listen, I'm not sure why you chose that space to do that, but I don't think it was appropriate. I don't appreciate it. And I want to have a conversation about it. Right. So this other person was acting in a very basically passive aggressive way. And this person said, one of my core values is communication. Right. I'm not going to let things slide, but I'm going to do things respectfully. And so I'm not going to stay here engaged in this Facebook land when that's not in alignment with who I am. And I don't think I'm going to have my most productive communication that way. And so instead made a phone call, right? And actually had a voice to voice conversation with somebody. And I've known her to do this many times. And that's just part of her core values, is communication, open, transparent communication. And so regardless of how other people are acting, how do you want to show up? Who do you want to be? Right? But there's also another part of it. It's who do you want to be regardless of the unhelpful stuff that your brain is saying to you?
Mm.
Because you probably all know, because you're in exceptional connections and you have lots of wonderful training on all these things, but we have that lizard brain, we have the amygdala back there that is just trying to keep us safe all the time. And so it tells us stuff to scare us all the time, right? It tells us stuff to scare us all the time. So it's knowing that sometimes it's piping up with really unhelpful stuff. And it's being able to say, okay, I hear you. I hear your little thing. Like, and people have all sorts of different approaches for how to deal with that voice, that nasty little voice in their head. But to be able to say, okay, but who do I want to be regardless? Regardless of that nasty little thought back there, how do I want to show up regardless? So, who do you want to be regardless of how other people are acting and regardless of the unhelpful stuff that your brain is going to serve up from time to time?
So I've heard that the ego, id, drunk monkey is what I've
Yeah,
heard.
drunk monkey. Yeah.
I love the drunk monkey. We just say thank you for sharing.
That's great. Like because it really is, it really is, our brains trying to keep us safe. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, thanks. Unhelpful. Because a lot of people can get caught up in the truth of what is being said or not by our brains. And what I think is more important is to say, is that helpful? If
Right,
it's helpful, I'll listen to it. If it's not, like, that's not helpful. Just
right.
thank you though. Go ahead and go
Yes.
over there.
Well, you said
Tuck
something
back
really
in.
important. That's the part of our brain that actually is there to keep us alive, right?
Yep.
So we can respect and have compassion but we also are adults and we know, what's going on. We can assess it and we can be able to quiet that voice and say it's okay. Or we can
Yep.
say, wow, I better pay attention. So
Absolutely. No, I mean, walking to my car at night, right? If I'm alone in a parking lot walking to my car at night, you're going to bet I'm going to listen to that part of my head a lot more
yes,
than when I'm afraid to hit post on some sort of marketing piece, right? Like, it's like taking it, assessing, where am I? Am I safe? Yeah, I'm safe. All right, brain, thank you. Go back to bed now.
yes,
Come back again later.
yes. That's really good. Okay, so vision and
Oh,
goals.
yes, yes,
Can you
yes.
share with us
Thanks
a
for
little
moving
bit
me
about
along.
that?
I'm like, what are we doing? So the vision is just, where do I want to be 3 to 10 years from now? But the way I like to think about vision is, what would life look like really tangibly? Like, and this is where every year I do a letter to myself a year ahead, right? Like, it's December, like this year I'll be writing a letter to myself on, I guess it'll be in December. I'll write a letter for myself from December of 2023, telling me all the things that happened that year, right? Just really visualizing and getting, like in front of me, like, here's what life would look like. Here's how I will know that these things are happening. Here's what the evidence would be. And being able to create those visions and outline that. And I say 3 to 10 years because whatever you pick the range. Some people are like 10 years, there's no freaking way. And other people are like 3 years, there's no freaking way. That's too far out too. And so you can make it shorter if you want to. But start playing around with vision and where you want things to go. And then the goals are just the milestones, that you're going to achieve along the way. This is the stuff that you're going to cross along the way, and that's it. So sometimes it's really funny because sometimes goals I don't think are all that helpful. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of goals in some ways, right? I think it's good to have some milestones that you're working towards achieving. But I think sometimes that can come at all costs, or it can come in a way that has to look so specific that you're missing other opportunities around you that will get you to where you want to go, but it just looks different. So when it comes to goals, it's like thinking about the milestones, but don't get too fixated on the exact path that needs to happen to get there.
So very much like a New Year's resolution, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Where
with
it's
New
a
Year's
little
resolutions, they
looser.
usually don't work.
Yeah.
But if we have, a why are we doing this? What is the motivation intrinsically for us? Or what are the milestones? I like the word milestones because
Mhm.
a milestone isn't the end all be all, but it's a marker that tells us we're making progress.
Mhm. Well, and I think that I think that what I would almost even add here, like, what are the milestones or what is the identity you're working on creating, right? I
Mm.
really like James Clear's work in Atomic Habits. If you guys have not read Atomic Habits or listened to it, it's a great audiobook as well. Um, I usually listen to those kinds of books as audiobook first, and if it's good, I buy the hard copy book so I can do all my underlining and, and referencing. But Atomic Habits is excellent, and what he talks a lot about is identity. What is the identity you're trying to form? I am
Mm.
somebody who, right? And then what are the actions that it takes? What, you know, who, what is it that somebody would do who has that identity? So if you're somebody who is healthy, super healthy and strong, it's not a matter always of, okay, I'm going to weigh this much, right? It's a matter of, I am somebody who eats more fresh fruits and vegetables every day. I am somebody who eats less, um, starchy foods or whatever it might be. I'm somebody who walks every day, not necessarily somebody who runs 20 miles every day, right? But maybe you're somebody who runs every day, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a certain amount.
Oh, that's good. I love
Yes,
that.
Nicole. Yeah, they're a good way to let you know that you're on track toward your vision for sure. For
Yes.
sure.
And Mary said when we were talking about the brain, she said, what do we do to, regardless of what our brain is saying? What if we are hearing what we are hearing is not helpful? So we were kind of talking about that. We
Mm-hmm.
just thank our brain, right? Or thank that drunk monkey,
Yep.
pat it on the back, reassure it, and move on.
And that's where having that going back to the values part, that's where having that clarified ahead of time, right? So when you do values work, then you can know, yeah, oh yeah, these are my values. This, like, and you articulate it and you have that clarity, right? So then you share it with people, you share it on your website, you share it wherever, right? You talk about it all the time so that when those moments come up, it's easier to tap into your values. Like, this is work to do kind of in advance so that when life happens, you're able to tap into those values.
Yes, that's so true.
So, shall we move along? Is that okay?
Yes,
All
yes,
right,
please do.
cool. So now we get down into projects and actions. And so this definition of projects I like comes from David Allen. I think it's really important. So his David Allen is like one of my favorite influences as well. I call him my intellectual crush. He wrote Getting Things Done, an excellent book that I've read way too many times. But I really like his definition here because it's super important. Projects are what are the multi-step outcomes needed to achieve your goals. And it's so important to note this whole multi step thing because people, I think, confuse projects and actions a lot. When they do a brain dump and do a to do list, they're usually putting down a list of projects, not a list of actions, but they think it's a to do list. And like, you can't do projects, right? You can't do a project. You can do an action, right? So actions are the things that you're actually going to do to move a project forward, right? Projects are the things you're going to do to achieve the goals and so on and so forth.
Can you give
So
us an example of that?
sure, sure. So one one that I experienced actually that was on my to-do list, right? Before I wisened up in my productivity ways was it was scheduled dentist appointment. I seriously had scheduled dentist appointment on my to-do list forever. Here's the catch. I didn't have a dentist. I had moved and I needed a new dentist. So how the heck am I going to schedule a dentist appointment when I have no dentist, right? So the project that actually was a project, right? It wasn't an action. It wasn't something I could check off. It was going to take more than one step for me to accomplish this. Schedule a dentist appointment. Like how many times can we like I was fooling myself on that over and over again. So, really, my next action, right, was to reach out to my friends who live in the area to say, hey, who's your dentist, right? Who's your favorite dentist? To reach out to my networking group or to do a post on Facebook. What is really that next thing that needs to happen that is actually doable? That's the action. The project, unfortunately, was scheduled dentist appointment, right? Once I got that, right, once I got that information of a few dentists, then the next step would be to research them. And then once I've researched them, it's going to be checking to make sure, part of that's making sure, will they take my insurance? And then after I do that, then it's selecting the dentist. And then after I do that, guess what I can do? I can schedule a dentist appointment. Right. And so we can really fool ourselves on what we write down as doable or what we put into our apps or whatever as doable. when they're not actually doable. And so that creating that distinction between projects and actions for yourself is, if nothing else, if you take nothing else away from what we just talked about, all of these things we talked about, take this, take this and run with it. Is
Yes.
to make sure that you're distinguishing between projects and actions, because that will allow you to make progress on whatever it is that you're wanting to make progress on.
Yes. And you know what? There's so much frustration that people go through when they're not clear on the distinction, and they're wondering why they can't make progress, and why it feels like, some things you can just go do,
Oh yeah.
clean the bathroom. But
And
even that has steps, right?
yeah, but
Um,
and so that's something though that you've done enough that you kind of know the steps, so you probably don't need to outline it, right? So there's some things where, like, yeah, it's a project, but I've done it so many times that maybe you don't need that next action
yeah,
identified, and that's okay. Like, I don't want people to overdo it, but if
right,
something is sitting, that's your clue. If something is sitting, it's either you actually don't want to do it,
right.
or you don't have the next action really truly identified. Like, what is the next step I'm going to take?
Yes.
I say it in a really creepy way. I'm like, what is the next thing I could walk in and see you doing to move this forward? It means I could haunt
Mm,
you all at any minute, but like, what is the next thing
yes,
I could walk in and visibly see you doing to move this forward?
right.
You could see me researching dentists. You could walk in and see me online looking at different dentist websites. That is an action.
Right. No, that's really good, because sometimes, we want to jump into it, and
Yes.
it doesn't help us move forward. It just makes us more confused. We need to stop and back up. And like you say, break it down into the incremental parts of
Yep.
what's the next step. And so I
Well,
think
and
that's
we're
the distinction,
smart.
right? The
Yeah, yeah,
distinction between projects and actions is steps.
absolutely. The actual physical things I can see somebody can be doing that
Yeah,
anybody could walk in and see you doing to move forward. And the
right,
problem is y'all are smart. You're smart, so you're thinking 3 steps ahead, right? You forget that there's a step A, a step one.
right,
You're on step 4 when you're putting it on your list.
right.
We need you to start at step 1 when you're stuck, right? When you're stuck, start at
Yes.
step 1.
Well, this seems like it's like a, no brainer conversation that we're having, especially with the caliber of people that are on our call right now and people who will be listening. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important for us to pause and just recognize that. And I'm just going to share an example. We talked about cleaning the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just get the things I need and go do it, right? And it's done. But when my daughter was growing up and I was turning over some tasks to her, I showed her how to clean the bathroom, and she's like, okay. And she went and got a little 3x5 card and wrote down the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept that little 3x5 card. I found it years later in the
Cute.
bathroom. So cute, right?
Well,
She
and
wanted to do a good job,
yeah.
but there were steps.
Mm-hmm.
And she wisely just discerned, I'm not going to remember all this.
Yeah, what's the first thing mom did?
Yeah,
Mom got all the supplies together, right?
right.
Okay, go get all the supplies. Yeah. You guys, I have to do this for myself weekly. It is on a weekly basis that there's something on my list that is sitting there. I'm like, oh, this isn't the next thing I need to do. It's the thing before this is the next thing I need to, right? Like, I have step 3 on here. I can't do that without doing steps 1 and 2. All right, change this step 1. Okay, now I can do this, right?
Yes.
I work on this stuff all the time. I help other people do this all the time, right? And still it trips me up, right? So yeah, it doesn't matter how. I argue that it's people who are too smart. Y'all are too smart, and you're thinking so far ahead, right? That, because that's how we all think. We're like thinking ahead, right? That can stop you from making progress sometimes.
So true. So true. I love this. So I don't want to stop you if you want to finish any thoughts on projects and actions
No.
before we open up the lines here.
Oh, I love it. David Allen paired with Stephen Covey is productivity magic. Yes, Nicole. All
Oh,
right,
it's
yeah,
so
I
true.
will stop sharing, and that way, yeah, if anybody has questions or just add to the discussion, whatever.
Oh, Karen wants me to share the file card on cleaning the bathroom.
Oh my gosh, I need it too. Can you just post that to Facebook, please?
There are steps.
There are steps, but there are, right? Like, if
It is a project.
you guys, seriously, I cannot tell you how many times something has been in my app to say, like, okay, review this thing, right? Review this piece of writing of some sort.
Mhm.
And it sits there and it sits there and it sits there because I can't just review something. I do better when I have pen and paper. And if I'm reviewing something, when I can write on it. And so I will seriously sometimes say, review this space dash space. And I seriously have typed these exact words: Elise, print the damn thing out. Elise, my name and everything. Elise,
Yeah.
print the damn thing out, exclamation point. And guess what? I print it out. Suddenly
Yes.
I can review it, and now I am done. So
What a concept, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I
you know
did
what?
the same thing.
We have to have Nicole on our conversations to connect more often, because I'm usually like urging people to ask questions, and she's chomping at the bit. So you know what?
I love it.
We are
This was a
officially
special
opening
case
up
though,
here.
because I'm like all over. Oh, I can get new nuggets on this here. There are some of them where I'm less enthused.
So go for it, Nicole. I love it. You made my day.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. So it's that task list, that whole break it down to what's the thing I can do. I've kind of I do my task list every Monday, and it's like that's my joy. It's like, oh, I'm going to write out all the things I can do, and I write out okay, I'm going to fold the laundry this way. Okay, and then I've gone down that rabbit hole, so I kind of am on the other end of this. But yeah, just that. Right. Yeah, giving myself it's like, okay, what can I do to move this forward? It's like this task, maybe I won't finish this task Monday, because I move all of my tasks to Monday. I go from Monday to Monday, and like, I'm going to do these 18 things this week, and the rest of them will be next Monday. But it's like, I can't move it forward unless I can't check it off, or I always change the date. I never check anything off.
Same here. I just keep advancing it forward. Or like, it depends.
Right,
it depends
right. Because it's like nothing, there's very few things that are completely done. I have to do laundry again.
Check offable.
Right. But yeah, just pick that thing to make it forward.
You have that one moment where you can take a deep breath, right? And just say,
right.
I made progress.
Currently, the laundry is done.
Yeah. Right. Well, and listen, guys, I am a pen and paper person. I really am. Like, I take notes. If you see me in a client session, like, I have a page full of notes. Like any kind, like I'm doing a podcast interview, I'm taking notes the whole time the person is talking, as if I need to like recall or remember anything. I love having a to-do list. Like when we do stuff around the house, we print out a whole list of stuff we want to do, right? And then I want a big fat marker to cross it off, right? Like I want to be able to cross the thing off. So that's where I get my satisfaction on crossing things off, is in like my personal, like we're working on the house projects kind of space. Everything else is electronic, and sometimes that can be unsatisfying. So it's like for like, I'm in, like I said, ENFJ. Us J's, we like closure. We like to check things off and move on. And so it's finding ways to create that with the systems you have. And so yeah, I roll a date. I identify the next action once I got the first one done, and roll that date forward to when that next action needs to happen, because it doesn't always have to happen today. And now at least it's off my list for today, and that is satisfying. Yeah. So it's just kind of finding your own ways to get the satisfaction that you need and giving that to yourself. I'm a big fan of give yourself what you need, whatever that means.
So you just read my mind, because my question for you is, now that we have more awareness around productivity, like what's next? So what I'm hearing you say is we need to just be kind to ourselves, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, I think the other thing, you and I were talking about it before we got on, before everybody joined us. And that is really, acknowledge where you're at right now. And so when I showed you the model here, I'll go back to it real quick, just so you can see it. When we were talking about, purpose and values, visions and goals and projects and actions, in my one-on-one work, I used to always try to start people here. I was just like, we got to get your purpose figured out, because if we have your purpose and we have your values, it's the filter for everything, right? And I had some people that could start there, but I had a lot of people that wanted my help, that they are so overwhelmed by daily life. There is just so much going on. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just, this is where they're at right now, right? They're so overwhelmed by the daily life of work that they can't look 3 years ahead. They can't look 2 weeks ahead. And they sure as heck cannot think about, why am I here? Why am I here? And what do I believe in, right? And so that's where 6 years ago, right, this work came about. This was stuff that I was doing that I wasn't ever teaching anybody. And it was my now wife who was just like, people don't know this. Like, not everybody is wired like this. Not everybody's wired like me and Cyndi and Nicole, right? Not everybody's wired. We're not all systems dorks, right? And so it's helping people hear first so that they can move up the rest of those levels, right? So they can get that clarity at those other levels eventually. And so really what I would say is what's next is to assess, where are you at? You know, if you are constantly worried like things are slipping through the cracks, if you're not sure what's getting done, if you're feeling bad about all the things that aren't getting done every day, then this is the place to start, right? If you are waking up in the middle of the night going, oh crap, I forgot, right? You know, all of those things, if you feel like people can't count on you, like this is where to focus. And then the rest of this will come much more easily, much more easily.
I love hearing that because not everybody teaches that. You know, it's more like sequential. You have to do this, then this, then this. And it bogs down the process where a lot of times you just need to get those systems and structures in place and move forward.
Well, because then you can see it. What happens is really interesting when they get the systems in place. When people get their systems in place, I call it a bonus brain. When you build your bonus brain, that holds everything that needs to be remembered, it gives you this visual, right? It gives you the ability to see all of your commitments, both of time when it comes to meetings, appointments, drive time, all that kind of stuff, and then the projects and actions. You start to get a way more realistic view about how much time you actually have to do things.
Yes.
And when you do that, it makes prioritization a lot easier. When suddenly you only have 1 hour of free time on a Monday and you have 40 items on your list and you can see that more clearly, right? You can go, oh, suddenly you're like, well, if I only have an hour, it's these three things, easy. Like I know exactly what I need to do, right? I like these things must get done today, right? And it
Right.
changes everything. So then you slowly start to go, okay, I need to be committing to less. I need to be prioritizing differently. I need to set better boundaries. Like Nicole was talking about earlier, like I need to offload this. Maybe I need to hire somebody, right? But it's getting the picture of your reality in front of you is what allows you to then prioritize and also go like, wait a minute. I don't care about this. Why is this on my why am I even why is this here? Why is this taking up my time and my space and my energy? This is a should, right? This is
Yes.
something I think I should be doing because of other voices around me. Not if I only have, you know, this much time. No, this is not a priority. So it changes.
Yeah,
I think it's really powerful. I think it changes everything.
I agree. I agree. And so Chuck was mentioning in the chat box, there's power in having an accountability partner.
Yes. Yes.
So I found that's really critical because there's times that I'll put things off because they feel overwhelming to me and I don't know the next step. And knowing that I have an appointment on Friday
Yes.
to deliver gets me in action in ways that nothing else will. So there's something
Well,
really powerful about that.
and it's different though for people. Like I'm the same way, Cyndi. Have you all heard of the four tendencies? Oh, her name is escaping me. She wrote The Happiness Trap. But anyway, just Google the four tendencies, you'll find it. But basically, it's an assessment that looks at this quadrant of how we're motivated. So is it internal motivation, external motivation, that kind of thing. And so I'm an obliger, right? So I have everything is external for me. Like accountability to other people is critical to my moving things forward. That's really helpful to me. And so an example of that is over this past year, I've started a podcast. I have never been able to consistently generate weekly content ever. I try. I go in fits and starts. I hired somebody to help me with a podcast. So I have a podcast producer. That is the best money I've ever spent because guess who gets a podcast out every week now? Because I have somebody that's helping me with it. I have partnership, I have accountability, right? And so the four tendencies I think can be a really revelatory. So then you can see like, oh, I just need this. I don't need to question it. I don't need to feel bad that I need this external accountability. This is something that I need. It's something I'm wired for, and I'm going to give it to myself as much as possible. Just came out of that obligerness in me. I was wanting to like every Friday, David Allen calls a weekly review. I call it a systems check, but where I'm like, get my bonus brain, back to good again every Friday. And I wasn't doing it. I wasn't getting my in tray empty. I wasn't getting my inbox empty. Like I wasn't doing it. And one day I just threw that out on Facebook and just said, hey, and I said, get your stuff together. This 12-week challenge is free. Like, just do this with me, right? Like, who wants to do this? And the very first session, like I had 20 people like, I want to do this with you. I'm like, great. So I'm like, all right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just play music and everybody's going to get their systems back to good. And people were like, what system? They're like, what are you talking about? They're like, what system? And that's again where my wife had to talk me down after that. I was like crying afterwards. I was like, they don't even know what I'm talking about. And she's just like, Elise, people don't do what you do, right? And she's like, just teach us how to do the system. And now 6 years later, it's an actual program, right? So
Wow. I
it's
love
that,
hearing
but
the background.
that came out of my need to have
Mhm,
community and
mhm,
accountability. So
mhm,
now I have a just community of all my graduates, right? And
mhm,
every Friday I show up for them so that they can do their systems check with me, right?
mhm.
Like every Friday we're there, and but there's all these other things I do for them as a community, but it it that was giving myself what I needed, created something that I could give to other people too.
You're all speaking the same language, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool, right? Everybody has all the
Yes.
terminology. We can all make our little jokes, right? We do listen to music. It's great. So, yeah.
So, Mary, feel free to unmute yourself because she was commenting in the chat box, and this is the time
Mhm.
to ask your questions or share your ahas or epiphanies from this conversation. So feel free to
Yeah,
unmute yourself, guys.
I was just mentioning that, yeah, accountability is so important. We were talking about this in our mastermind group yesterday, and how you don't you want to make sure you do it before you need to report, and you don't want to have to say you didn't do it. So accountability is so important. And I love today when you talked about being fully present. I've been thinking about that a lot. Being fully present. When you're with the kids, be fully present with the kids. When you're doing your business, be fully present with that. And each thing that you're doing, be fully present with that, what you're doing at that time. I
Mhm.
think that's so important. So thank you for mentioning that today.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I want to note though that it doesn't mean that interruptions aren't going to happen, that you're not going to have thoughts that occur, but it's having a place that you trust, that you can toss those things so you can come back and be present again. And so that's the key is like
Yeah.
people give way too much power to interruptions. and and I think that like I can do that too. So I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. I'm saying I work on this all the time, right? So this is the stuff I'm always working on. But yeah, I think that people can give way too much power to interruptions because they're afraid they're going to forget. They're afraid they're going to forget the thing that was being asked of them. They're afraid they're going to, right? And so when you have a place to hold that, the interruptions don't have to take over. You can just go, okay, it's over there now. I'm back. Here I am. What were you saying, honey? Kind of thing, right?
Right.
It changes everything to have that kind of systematic support behind you. That, like I said, like the bonus brain to hold you and support you.
So one of the things we talked about when you spoke to our Exceptional Connections group last week
Mhm.
is, and I think this is a great audience to be able to share this with again and have this documented, is, I'm continually frustrated by all the portals that we have, right? There's
Yeah.
the email, and there's the text, and then there's the Facebook Messenger, and then there's the calls, and there's the voicemails, and the phone. I mean, all the kinds of things that are calling out to us. And one of the things that gets me that Elise gave a really great solution for is I will, when I'm on the run or doing something, I'll see something come in and I'll read
Mm-hmm.
it and I'll realize I can't deal with that this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just like have a little reminder. Okay, I'll get back to that. So then when I have a moment
Did you see
later
the
in the
reminder button
day,
she pushed on her head, on her brain? She's like, a little reminder.
Is that where it
right
goes?
there, put it right there.
It'll stay there
And
reliably, no problem.
yes, exactly. That's not the right place for it. I should put it there, right? And so then I go back and I'm like, okay, now where did
Yeah.
was that an email? Was that a Facebook message? Was it a text? And so I spend more time just finding the dang message
Yeah.
so that I could respond to it appropriately because there's usually something I missed. And so Elise, share with our listeners here what your suggestion was, because I think
Oh, yeah.
that's a brilliant one for all the portals that we have.
Yeah, so it's picking one place to put everything, right? So if and you can use what you got. So if you already use an app for your to-do list or for tasking, use that. I use an app called GQs. I like it because it's cheap. I like inexpensive tech. The least expensive tech I can find to start out with, and so I use an app called GQs. And so if a text comes in or a Facebook Messenger comes in, and just like Cyndi, this happens to me all the time. Like, oh, I shouldn't have looked at this. I shouldn't have looked at this. I don't have time to do this right now, right? Then I can just say, okay, respond to Cyndi's text, respond to Cyndi's Facebook Messenger, and I put that in my task list, and I put a due date on it of today if it needs to be today, right? So that way I only have one place to go to see what needs to get done, and I don't have to go try to find it. So I just get it all into one place. You can make that be whatever place you want to, but it's got to be a place that you trust and really only use that one place. So if it's going to be, if you're going to say, send yourself an email to say, respond to Cyndi's text, fine, but that's the only place you're going to put those messages then, so that you don't ever lose track. So it's
I
all
use
about
ClickUp, which
So
is
that's
also free.
yeah, ClickUp is awesome.
Can you,
here,
I always get that wrong.
I can put a link in because it's
Put it in the, because I think you have a link for, it's a free
Yes.
service.
I've been talking with them, and I got there's a free version, but I also have a version where it's an extended free trial of the real deal. So
That'd be great.
yeah, they've been very cool that way.
So
They get
I know
business from
we're
me.
going over by a few minutes, but this has been such a great conversation. I want to give anybody who has a question they want to ask you or something they want to share an opportunity before we close here. So feel free to raise your hand.
I love the idea that you just said also. I mean, everything was great today, but what you just said is to put it all in one place. I think that's perfect idea. I need to start doing that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the more you can minimize those places, the easier it's going to be intentional about it all.
There's some things you can direct to others. I have on my voicemail,
Yes.
like, hey, thank you for calling Nicole. If you want me to respond, email me at or text me at. I might check this voicemail next Tuesday.
Yeah. No, I do that too. Mine says, hey, if you want a response from me, be sure to send me an email, right? Like, tell people.
Or a quicker response,
clarity.
right?
Yeah.
Right, quicker response, I think is how
clarity. But that's an example
Right.
of clarity, communication, consistency. You know that you'd do better with that, right? So the clarity is, I'd rather have via email. You communicate it in the voicemail, and now it's actually a system, right? It's already in place. Like the consistency is already in place because it's built into like having a voicemail message. So
yeah,
it's awesome.
And I think Instagram. I think I set up Instagram to do an auto text. Is it Instagram that can do that?
Oh, I don't know.
It's been a while, but you can set up like auto responders on your Instagram DMs. And I did that saying, please email me. Because
Like,
I'm not.
Or
Okay.
email
Yeah,
as well, right? If you don't get back, if you're out of town.
Yeah.
Karen,
Right.
did you want to share
I was gonna
something?
say, well, yeah, something just clicked to me. If I can figure out how to get into the voicemail on my office phone.
That would be step one of the project.
Step one.
Exactly.
I'm very thankful. It's connected to here, and I don't know what it's magic, and I'll have to figure out. But I don't want to return a call just to say, "Oh, you can go online and schedule time with me."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like if I did that on my voicemail, that would help a lot.
Yeah, that'd be huge, right? Go to
They'll
your
leave a
website
message,
/
I want to
schedule.
talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And I want to hire you, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh, a phone call I have to return. And that's phone calls. And so, yeah, if I could have it on there, like either send me an email, I'll respond quickly,
Mm-hmm.
or go away. I'll respond quickly, or make an appointment, on my website. Because they obviously know where to find the website because they found me.
Exactly.
Right.
They've done
Or
that
give them
much.
the website too, so that they
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You
guess
don't
I
get another
could do that. I could do that. That kind of, that helps. I just have to figure out, how do I get into voicemail? I'm sure there's ways.
I love that, Karen, because that is an example of like an aha or epiphany that just occurred to you that will make your life simpler, easier. And we all need those things, right?
I really identify with, I've got things to do, like, oh God, thank God I don't do Instagram, you guys.
I know.
Okay, just adding one more
It's
inbox.
just one more layer.
I have the texts, and then I have the emails. And does anybody have a great idea of how to do your email, like to move it to a different box? Does that
to
work?
move it
You
to a
need to
different
talk to Nicole.
Yeah,
Nicole is your
Nicole-
girl.
Nicole's an email expert for
She
sure.
she's amazing. She has systems and structures that I've never seen before. They're
Yeah, so
really-
I'll take, so what these talks is the high level productivity, do these, and I am like the click here, click here, click here. And so
Basically,
even
I
Karen,
refer people to Nicole.
yeah.
Yeah, everybody's pointing to Nicole.
Yeah.
So Nicole, by the way, is going to be our speaker in August. So you got to be listening for we'll do a conversation to connect in August. And
Yeah, that'll be
And-
fun. And yeah, Elise, I need to talk with you again because we should reconnect. And Karen, I want to talk with you because I could also help you find your voicemail.
I need
Yes.
you. No, you can't. I know how to find the voicemail. It's the person that, I pay that sets it up.
Well,
That-
and
Oh,
that's
okay.
the thing.
That's easy.
That's
I
a-
can do that one, but the email,
Nicole
yeah.
could help you with.
let's talk because it's,
Yeah.
I'm really,
Beautiful.
I don't use Outlook. And then,
Okay.
yeah.
Here,
Anyway,
I'll put my link in. Is that okay if I put my link in?
yeah, add your
This is
information in the
exceptional
chat box.
connections.
So
We
I
connect
want to
here, right?
honor everybody's time because we went over here. We've been having so much fun. But I just want to tie a bow around the conversation. So feel free to use the chat box to, get information from each other and save that chat box because it does have the GQ link that Elise shared as well. So
how do you save it?
Chuck, do you have anything you wanted to share? I wanted to give you an opportunity before we close here.
Yeah.
No, I think this has been great. I mean, I love it.
It's been a
Yep.
really fun conversation.
Well, productivity, it's always a problem, so I think this is really good. It kind of gets you motivated, right? To quit procrastinating and start doing it. I love this idea about the task list. I'm guilty.
Yep.
That's
we-
what I mean, I'm really guilty of it.
yeah.
I got 20 notes of, when we get off, I'm gonna put these all on one page, which I know better. Do it? No.
Well, you'll have to join us on Fridays then. Email me, Chuck, because I think you have access to the GIST community. I'm pretty sure. So email me when you get a chance and I'll double check.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do.
What community?
So her email is Elise and Elise, would you put that in the chat for
Sure.
me, please?
Yeah,
Elise at
Elise.
IliseEnriquez.com. And then also to learn more about all the amazing things that she offers, you can go to IliseEnriquez.com, her website.
Yep.
So any closing remarks, Elise? Thank you so much for your time and generosity
Yeah.
of sharing with our community last week and for this really rousing, is that a word?
I'll take it.
Rousing.
I think it's accurate. I get
Conversation
fired
that
up.
we've had.
I get fired up about this stuff. So yeah, rousing for sure. No, really, like I said before, it's about getting everything in front of you so you can give yourself that space so you can dream and rest and recover and do all the things that you want to do in this world. That's what I want for all of you.
Thank you so much. And
You're
so
welcome.
I'll just leave you with remember to make every connection an exceptional connection. And Elise and I were talking about this at the beginning of the call, how my heart is, I just really feel like right now, what we need as entrepreneurs is we need relationship to be able to connect with each other, be heard. Productivity is definitely a wonderful conversation to have right now because moving out of the space we've been in the last 2 years with COVID, we want to and realize that things are going to start accelerating and we're going to need to have systems and structures in place so that we can be efficient and we don't get, I don't know, like a tidal wave. We want to be able to, what do they say when you're running, hit the ground running, not hit the ground.
And so you can be intentional about creating time to connect, right?
Yes.
So moving forward, what matters most is whatever that is. Sometimes taking a nap is moving forward what matters most. Truly.
That's a
Sometimes
good point.
taking time to eat your lunch slowly, right, is moving forward what matters most.
Yes.
Sometimes calling your friend or answering the text that just came in because your child is in crisis is moving forward what matters most. So
true.
that's the key. And connection, Cyndi and I were talking about, is what matters most for a lot of people right now. So
Yes.
doing this can allow you to create the space for that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Elise. Thank you for everyone who joined us. Thank you for your contribution to this conversation. Remember to make every connection an exceptional connection.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.